You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
So, you guys know this song, right? It's probably as much as I can play without them doing a copyright infringement. But there's an interesting story to that song. It seems that when composer Lalo Schifrin in 1966 came up with it, he wanted to brand it specifically for the movie or for the series Mission Impossible. And he did this in a very unique way. It seems that those first four notes that get repeated, dun, 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 dun. Well, you can kind of break that down to long and short. Long, long, short, short, long, long, short, short. So musically, one is a longer note than another. But you could also break that down into Morse code, which would be the equivalent of dash, dash, dot, dot, dash, dash, dot, dot. And if you know Morse code, and I'm sure all of you do, because we use it so much in everyday life, dash, dash in Morse code is the letter M. Dot, dot in Morse code is the letter I. So that opening, dun, 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 is just saying M-I, or Mission Impossible over and over again. Pretty clever, huh? Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. It is July 18th, I believe. We are in the countdown to San Diego Con. Dynamite put out a bunch of announcements today involving Red Sonja and Vampirella, Army of Darkness. One of their stories today involving Army of Darkness is really cool. If you are a fan of Army of Darkness, the third movie in the franchise, and for me, the best, it has an alternate ending. And it's an alternate ending that was chosen by the studio. The original ending has Ash getting this formula that he's supposed to take, I think it's 5 or 6 drops, and then it would take him back to his own time. Well, the problem is he gets distracted about halfway through and takes 7 drops. And when he wakes up, he's about 100 years past his time in this post-apocalyptic world. Now, the studio deemed that too much of a pessimistic ending. But most fans prefer that ending. Well, Dynamite, who some of you may know this, started their career as a publisher in 2004 doing an adaptation of Army of Darkness. Well, so what they're doing now, so Army of Darkness has been a big part of it for a long time, but they are taking the alternate ending and running with it. Now, this is going to be from writer Tony Fleece, who Tony's an old friend. He used to work in the same work out of Tone Rodriguez's studio, and I'd go over and over there and see him and see some of the other guys that worked out of there. But Tony's been doing Stray Dogs for Image and some other books, My Little Pony. He's mainly known as an artist, but he's been writing. And he's going to write this, and he's going to have a good friend of his, artist Justin Greenwood, do the art. And that's going to be coming out. It's going to be called Army of Darkness Forever. And they just announced it today, but I think it'll be in stores in October, appropriate month. And I just, like I said, I just really love the idea that they're actually going to run with from the original ending, Ash in this post-apocalyptic future world. So that should be a lot of fun. There are other ones. There's a big Red Sonja book coming out that'll be kind of a conglomeration of all of the best Sonja stories from all the way back in her Marvel days to when Frank Thorne was doing her series, all the way up until now, and with Gail Simone and stuff like that. So there's a lot of really good stuff. And we do have a new Red Sonja book debuting this today, and we'll be talking about it on In Stores this week. And then the Vampirella book is interesting because it's going to be called Vampirella Dead Flowers, and it's being written, and some of the cover and covers will be done by Sarah Frazetta, the granddaughter of Frank Frazetta. And there's going to be a Frank Frazetta cover as well, using one of his classic pieces. But Sarah is going to be doing one of the covers. And of course, Lucio Parrillo is going to be doing one, and Ergen Gundas, and Colleen Turner. So that's going to be a new Vampirella #1 debuting in October as well. So that's a lot of fun stuff that Dynamite announced. Let me check let's see. Cool's here. Ed's here. Hey, Ed. Hey, Cool. Hey, Triple B. Good to see you. Ed says, wow, a new piece of useless trivia to store in my head. Yes, every time you hear the theme, you will know it has to do with Morse code. It also says, I have a cool new crochet pattern for you, Dan. I sent Jay a pic. He's going to share it with you at some point. Oh, I would love to see this. So very cool on that. All right, I'm going to have to make that. That definitely has to be made. So, all right. Serious note here. We're going to have to change up what we're doing, at least for a little while. With the actors' strike and the writers' strike, the unions are understandably cracking down on anybody crossing the picket line and what they consider that. And part of that is anybody promoting movies or TV shows by struck studios. Now, this didn't seem like a big deal until the studios started reaching out to YouTube and TikTok people and offering to pay them to do promotional video for their movies. Give me 1 second. So then word came out that they would consider anybody who's doing these things to be crossing the picket line. And yeah. So yeah, going to have to change up some of the stuff we do here. So for the duration of the strike, we will not be doing shows specifically around television and movies. Now, that's not to say we can't talk about them. If you guys continue watching a show, or there's a show you particularly like, and you want to ask me a question, you want to get, what's the story on this or on that character, those things we can still do. But we're going to avoid doing reviews and promotions of shows during the strike. So we won't be continuing the Secret Invasion talk. And I won't be telling you guys like when new things are coming out, but I can still cover basic news like casting news, interviews, and stuff like that. So we'll still be doing the news, and I will be finding other things to cover, like today's topic. Now, Guy Gardner has been in the news, and he's not the most well known of Green Lanterns. I mean, sure, he's probably better known than Chip or Kilowog. Well, no, we've had a live action Kilowog, so I'll take that back. But so today we're going to do a deep dive into the history of Guy Gardner, and where he's kind of a joke, there's a lot to him. And there's some sadness to his history too. So we're going to dive deep into that. But we will do the news. But, so if you guys are watching Secret Invasion this week and you have a question, you can feel free to ask it and I can give you a quick answer. But I'll just be cutting back on doing full shows about it. And I've got some creative ideas on things we can do between now and when everything wraps up. Hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later. But one of the things we're bouncing around is the idea of me actually writing a comic script with you guys, just doing it on the show. Taking a character, coming up with a plot, writing the script like a one shot, stuff like that. So we'll see how that all works out. But so just so you know, originally I had planned to talk about Secret Invasion this week. I'd do 2 shows on that because we didn't get to do Thursday's show because of power outages. And then so we had last week's show, we had this week's show coming up. I watched The Witcher over the weekend, the first part of the final season or the 3rd season. I was going to talk about that, but I'm going to have to put all that in my back pocket for now. So let's go ahead and real quick, let's see. Guy has always been my favorite Lantern. I love his attitude. It's interesting because his attitude changes a lot, but we'll get into that. Leonard, hello, Leonard. As a GL fan, it's a trip to see Guy getting this kind of coverage. Yeah, it is. Jay says, I want to see Fillion with the red hair and a bowl cut. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. And says, we should pitch our show idea now. They might take it since they don't have anything else in production. I don't know how that would work. I think right now, I'm not an active member of the WGA, but I would need to be. So if I pitch something now and it got picked up, that might preclude me from joining. I don't know. I'd have to look at that. Did you like The Witcher? Yes and no. If it was just The Witcher, yes. I loved the political machinations. I loved all the characters acting, all the different sleight of hand stuff going on. But knowing that this is the final season for Cavill, I kind of wish it would focus more on The Witcher and him doing The Witcher things, where this is much more of an ensemble season, and it's much more of a political thing, like a fantasy version of a political thriller, than it is the first, like what the first season was. So by itself, I liked it. But knowing that it's Cavill's last season, I kind of wished it could focus more on him. But that, again, that doesn't take away from how good it is. I'm very curious what the second half's going to play out. But they are doing a lot and bringing a lot of characters back. So we will see where this ends. So, all right, let's quickly run through some news stories, because I've got a lot on Guy Gardner, because he's been around a lot longer than you think. All right, so Justin Simien, who directed the new film Haunted Mansion, I'm not recommending to see it or not to see it, recently talked with the Direct about his previous announced Star Wars series based on Lando Calrissian. And while the series was announced 3 years ago, the only real update we've had on it has been from Kathleen Kennedy, who last year said that it was still in progress, but Nothing since then. And even Simeon seems to be a little out of the loop on it. He said, I certainly poured my heart and spent a lot of time working with them to put together a great show. It feels like everybody loves it. And I was told we had to put a pause on it because of scheduling. And the next update I got was in 2020. So I don't know. I have no idea what's going on with it. Now, while the fate of the show is unknown, a big factor is probably the availability of Donald Glover, who is an extremely busy actor. And, he did take on the role in Solo, a Star Wars story back in 2018. So really it comes down to his availability before they can move on with it. All right. Speaking of Secret Invasion, actor Dermot Mulroney was talking to Comic Book Movie about his role as President Ritson. And if you guys don't know, President Ritson was actually name dropped in Black Panther Wakanda Forever before we got to meet him in person. Now, the interviewer, while talking to Mulroney, pointed out that Harrison Ford will be General Thunderbolt Ross, and Thunderbolt Ross will be the president in Captain America Brave New World. Now, Mulroney responded with, yeah, no, I knew about this. I don't know what anybody's intent is. I couldn't ask for more. I'm so fulfilled and thrilled to have been part of Secret Invasion, but I have no concept of whether Ritson survives, lives on, or continues in the storyline. It'd be a thrill, of course, but if I have to lose the next election to anyone in America, and it happens to be Harrison Ford, I guess that's fair enough, and that's okay. Maybe I could run, I don't know. There's nothing against about 2 terms in the Marvel Universe. I could be as vice president, right? I could do 2 terms as president and then 2 terms as vice president under President Harrison Ford. So I like how he kind of dances around that. And it's true. If you're going to lose a presidency, losing it to Harrison Ford is not a bad way to go. I got a little bit of Star Wars news. And if you think the biggest problem with Star Wars right now is there's not enough Jedi, well, the Acolyte has you covered because they're going to have a bunch of them. According to showrunner Leslie Headland, she says, I would say the Acolyte stands out because it's the earliest in Star Wars timeline that we've ever been in live action. We are towards the end of the High Republic, leading into prequels, George Lucas's prequels. So we are looking at a time period where the Jedi are at the height of their power. We're looking at a time period where there is peace throughout the galaxy, and it was very challenging and interesting to make a Star Wars with no war in it. But with the Jedi at their peak, it makes the show very different from everything else. And Hedden went on to say, though the question became, well, what should the show be about if it's not going to be about galactic conflict? And I think that's what makes the show different and interesting, is that it's from the perspective of the bad guys or the villains of Star Wars. These are people who are using the Force in their own way, dipping into darker sides of the Force, and are doing it without being sanctioned by large institutions, which in this case is the Jedi. And I think that Star Wars is always about some version of the underdog versus the institution. So I think that's kind of fascinating because in this case, the big bads in this may be the Jedi. It says, one quick question on Secret Invasion. In your opinion, how long has Rhodey been a Skrull? Do you think Rhodey died in Civil War when he got shot out of the sky and fell? I've got mixed feelings on that. I didn't think, if you would have asked me before, I would have said that it was definitely Rhodey at Tony's side when he died, because it was an emotional moment. But listen, Kevin Feige has said that Rhodey has been a Skrull for a long time. So it is possible that Scrody, they've been calling him Scrody online, that Rhodey got replaced after Civil War, or at some point in between. But there does need to be a Rhodey at the end of this. So we know he didn't die in Civil War because they've got Armor Wars coming up, which is going to star him. And I don't think it's going to star a Skrull. So Where he gets replaced, I'm not quite sure, because it sounds, from Fahey, it sounds like it's been a while. Maybe he got replaced between Iron Man 1 and 2, and that's why he looks so different when he shows up at the Congress. Don't know. But Fahey makes it sound like he's been a Skrull for a while. But I do like the idea of Rhodey waking up after, they kill the Skrull, they wake him up at the end of Secret Invasion, and suddenly he's looking around this world, and his best friend is dead, he wasn't there, and he's motivated to collect all of Tony's armor that's being misused. I could see that. So that would make an interesting thing. All right, one last bit of news, and then we'll move on to Guy Gardner. Now, it might come as a surprise to some, but the upcoming Creature Commandos animated series that James Gunn has talked about will not be set around World War II. And that's kind of strange. This, of course, being the first project from Gunn and Peter Safran, it's said by Gunn himself that this is going to take place in the modern day. And he's also gone on to say that some of these characters will transfer into movies and stuff. But it's been kind of the comic history that the Creature Commandos were kind of tied to World War II. So it's going to be interesting to see how that's changed up. All right, Jay says, now like Grogu is forever Baby Yoda, now Rhodey Skrull will be Scrody. Yep, Scrody. Not mine. A couple other websites have been calling him Scrody, but it's kind of sticking. All right, let's go ahead. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about the completely insane and often sad history of Guy Gardner. Be right back.
Did you know that every Experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out, twitch.tv/the_EXP. Or just scan that QR code.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds, a promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
I still miss Uncle Crothcorn. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Remember to stick around. We've got in stores this week, Minute to Skim It and Mint Hunter tonight. So we got a great lineup, so you want to stick around for that. And we are going to dive right into the Guy Gardner stuff, but please hit the like and subscribe buttons, especially now. I'm going to need those numbers as we get through this strike. So, Guy Gardner, wow. A lot of people, I don't know about you, but for me, I think of Guy Gardner, and I have to think about the One Punch Batman thing. But I went out to the DC website first, and I said, all right, DC, how do you describe Guy Gardner? And they put a very brief description of the character on their website. And I'm going to quote it because it's quotable. He says, hot-headed, unruly, and prone to breaking the rules, Guy Gardner isn't always the most likable hero, but he's proven time and again to be a worthy Green Lantern. If Guy Gardner had been just a few miles closer to a dying alien named Aubin Sur, he, and not test pilot Hal Jordan, would have become the first human being to join the Green Lantern Corps, the group of intergalactic heroes guided by the Guardians of the Universe on the planet Oa. Eventually, however, Guy became a Green Lantern himself, quickly earning a reputation as a rebel without a cause, who doesn't know when to shut up. But whenever evil needs to be fought or lives are threatened, Guy Gardner is here to help. Just don't expect him to be nice about it. So that's their thing. And in a lot of ways, that is the equivalent of only describing R2-D2 as an astromech droid that shows surprising loyalty to its owners. Gardner is so much more than that brief interview, or that overview. But okay, let's get into the creation of the character, because he's kind of interesting from both in comics and how he came to be. Now, he first appeared in Green Lantern Volume 2, number 59, back in March of 1968. He was created by writer John Broome and artist Gil Kane. And it's said that Kane decided to make Gardner look like actor Martin Milner, who he was just starting a series at the time called Adam 12, where he played Officer Pete Malloy. And anyone who grew up with the series or the reruns, which is probably like me and Ed, they'll instantly figure out the resemblance. I mean, it's pretty damn close. Now, early appearances of the character, though, really didn't flesh him out any. He was just kind of a bland character. We wouldn't get the Guy Gardner that we really know now. Instead of just saving the damsel in distress like Superman would, Guy would like what we're doing here in the first place as he saves her, like being rescued by your dad. Yeah. Now, the team that really made him the guy we know today are Steve Englehart and Joe Stanton back in the 80s. And this was basically at a time where Guy had been put aside as the backup Green Lantern. John Stewart had stepped up, and now John was Green Lantern, but Hal Jordan was coming back, and Steve had to deal with this. And we got a quote from Steve, and he says, "When I took over Green Lantern, John Stewart was the GL, but everybody expected Hal Jordan to come back and relegate John to backup duty once again. And I decided that John deserved better. So I asked myself, why can't there be two GLs? And that led to, why can't there be more than two? That eventually led to the GL Corps. But along the way, I decided to resurrect the lost GL, Guy Gardner, who had been terminally bland and then brain damaged. A completely useless character as things stood. This led to both the Green Lantern Corps we know of today and the kind of jingoistic Guy Gardner that we ended up with. You know, the red-blooded American, gay, young-ho guy. And Stanton said that he kind of changed the look of Gardner. And I don't think it was that drastic of a change, but instead of Martin Milner being his guide, he went with Tim Pigott-Smith, who is a British actor who was starring at the time as Major Ronald Merrick in a series called The Jewel in the Crown. But again, it wasn't that dramatic of a change. I think he lengthened the nose and a few things like that. But overall, he still had a similar look. Now, let's switch to the actual history of the character. His origin has changed quite a bit over the years, but certain elements have remained the same. Now, Guy is born and raised in Baltimore to a father who is either an alcoholic and physically abusive, or a cop who's more emotionally abusive. Guy is stuck in his older brother's shadow, and his older brother has had multiple names depending on the era. One of them is actually Mace, but he's desperate to get his father's approval. He goes on to become a juvenile delinquent, but eventually returns to the straight and narrow thanks to his brother. His early origins had him being a football star whose career is cut short due to injury, where he ends up being a teacher, while the more recent origin, the one of the revamps, actually made him follow in the family tradition of becoming a cop. So it's like a whole line of cops. And then even more recently, they kind of retconned it back to his father being an abusive alcoholic. And so he didn't have a good upbringing, whichever one you go with. He didn't have a good upbringing, and it really laid out who the character is. So again, we think of the character kind of as a joke, but he's got a very tragic start. And it gets worse. When Abin Sur crash landed on Earth, and he had his ring look for a worthy successor, it found two, Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner. But Jordan was closer, forcing Gardner into a backup role. Now, what's really weird that is in an episode of Booster Gold, issue of Booster Gold, we see Booster go back in time and convince Guy to go visit his father on the night Abin Sur crashes, basically putting Guy further away and making Jordan the new Green Lantern. Now, I have no idea if this is considered canon or if this is just a one-off story they did, but that's pretty screwed up too. Well, later on, Jordan would find out about Gardner and the fact that there was this backup Green Lantern. So he goes out of his way to kind of accidentally run into the guy, and they become friends. And eventually he finds out that Jordan is Green Lantern, and he helps him in some adventures. Well, but they wanted to go with John Stewart because it was the 70s, and they wanted to be more diverse. So they had to do something with Guy Gardner. So they have Gardner in the middle of a giant earthquake trying to help his students, because this was back when he was a teacher, and he ends up getting struck by a bus while helping his students. And this ends up putting him in out of action long enough for the Guardians to choose a backup while Gardner was recovering. This led to John Stewart. Now, he would recover and would return to his backup role, and he was actually charging the ring while he was on backup duty. And it turns out the battery had been damaged and exploded in his face and sent him into the Phantom Zone. Now, this left everybody on Earth believing him to be dead. So Hal Jordan starts dating the guy's girlfriend. Telling you, this is a pretty tragic origin or history. So while he's in the Phantom Zone, Gardner, who now has lost his girlfriend, is being tortured by General Zod and others, and the other people stuck in the Phantom Zone. But then when he's finally rescued, he is so jacked up that he's diagnosed with brain damage and is stuck in a coma for a couple years. Now, and it gets even worse, guys. During Crisis on Infinite Earths, the Guardians decide, or a group of renegade Guardians decide to revive Gardner. Now, this says, in the first place, that they could have revived Gardner a lot sooner. So the fact that they waited until they needed something from him is kind of jacked up. But when they revived him, they gave him a ring that was not actually tied to the central power battery, because, again, they were renegade Guardians. And they ordered him to recruit a squad of deadly criminals and then go into the antimatter universe and attack the forces there. Now, the brain damage that was done to him, it kind of left him in this new personality where he was arrogant, violent, unstable, and often childlike. Now, this is the Gardner we get to know for a while, and he's able to put together a team, but Jordan and Stewart get together to stop him, because if he had succeeded, he would have ended up destroying the universe. So once it's all done and Crisis is over, Gardner then ends up being assigned as the GL for Sector 2814, which is Earth. This would lead him to becoming the founding member of the Justice League International, and to the infamous scene we talked about earlier, where he picks a fight with Batman, and Batman is able to take him down in just one punch. This resulted in him falling on the floor, hitting his head, and when he eventually wakes up, it's with a completely different personality, where now he's kind, sweet, kind of boyishly innocent. He acts like a perfect gentleman to all the women on the team. And, and as this goes on, as he stays with the team, his personality starts shifting back and forth. And he ends up going through like a handful of humiliations. He ends up in an ill-fated romance with Ice of Fire and Ice, and Ice ends up getting killed by the Overmaster. So this guy just can't win. Now, while all this is happening and he's recovering, everything you just told us about Guy just makes him even more metal. Yeah. Jordan ends up returning and wants his sector back, and Gardner challenges him to a fight, because that's what Gardner does, and with the idea that the loser would quit the Corps. Well, guess what? Gardner lost. Not happy being without his powers, he hunts down Sinestro's yellow ring after the villain's death and uses that, which, unlike Green Lantern rings that charge up off of power batteries, the yellow ring charges up from Green Lantern's rings during fights. So the more he fights Green Lanterns, it restores his power in his yellow ring. He would also be around for the big death of Superman. He's in on the fighting of Doomsday, though he gets his ass kicked. He ends up allying himself to the last son of Krypton, who turns out to be the Eradicator, posing as Superman. And he discovers that his brother has become an assassin, which leads to the two of them fighting. So after all of this, Guy would end up changing his name from that to the code name of Warrior, Guy Gardner Warrior. Again, there's just so much going on here with this character. After Hal Jordan tears up basically, Hal Jordan becomes Parallax and takes out the rest of the Green Lanterns. Ganthet comes and offers Gardner the ring, and he refuses it. He's like, "No, I've got my yellow one. I'm fine." And this is the ring that ends up going to Kyle Rayner. So Gardner could have been the new Green Lantern again. And then Gardner gets pulled into the fight with Parallax, who's Hal Jordan, and his ring is destroyed in the battle. So Gardner, how this happens, I don't know. Now powerless, Gardner joins an expedition to the Amazon, where he drinks the warrior water that activates alien DNA that has been implanted in his bloodline a millennium ago by the Voldarians. Yeah. This allows him to create an exosuit, even though his limbs, and he can turn his limbs into different weapons. So Guy Gardner goes from being a Green Lantern to a Yellow Lantern for a while using Sinestro's ring, to being this warrior guy that can build an exosuit because of alien DNA that's been hidden in his system, and he can turn his arms into weapons. Just so we're all caught up. Yeah, he really is the Gilligan of DC. Now, this is an interesting run of stories, and he's really struggling to use his powers because he can't quite get it. But he shows up as a guest star in Kyle Rayner's Green Lantern run, and he ends up owning a bar, so that something he can do between bounty hunter assignments is kind of like what he becomes. And then he loses his powers once again when Parallax returns and possesses Guy Gardner, and his human DNA ends up writing over his Voldarian DNA, making him back just to a normal person again. But he is returned to the Corps, given another ring. Hal Jordan suddenly can split his ring into two and gives a ring to Gardner. So he returns to the Corps, and when they defeat Parallax, Gardner ends up being made a senior instructor along with Kilowog and Rayner. And the trio are responsible for training the 7,200 members the Guardians intend to name. Gardner would go on to be a major player in the Sinestro Corps War and Blackest Night, where in the Blackest Night, his rage actually turned him into a Red Lantern. But he doesn't give up his Green Lantern ring, so he's literally flying around with two rings, a green and a red. He's like Christmas Lantern, which makes him incredibly powerful and able to take out most of the members of the Black Lantern Corps. But eventually, Mogo, the big living planet guy, takes away some of his Red Lantern stuff, and then Kyle Rayner, who at this point is now a Blue Lantern, is able to fully cure him of it. But during the New 52, Hal Jordan decides to send Guy Gardner undercover back into the Red Lantern Corps, because he can do Red Lanterns, or Red Rings, where Guy eventually defeats Atrocitus and takes over the Red Lantern Corps. So, now, again, this is kind of all over the place. The guy keeps getting his head hit, all this stuff, but as of this point, there's been no live-action version of Guy Gardner at this point. There was a scene planned in the Ryan Reynolds movie that would show Gardner as a football player as a possible candidate for the ring, but the scene was cut. Another series was being put together by HBO Max that would focus on the Green Lanterns and had Finn Wittrock cast as Gardner, but that has been going through some major changes. I think it's actually axed, but I don't know. And then, of course, we have the recent announcement that Guy Gardner will be in Superman Legacy with Nathan Fillion in the role. So that's your briefish history on the completely insane and sometimes kind of sad life of Guy Gardner. So let's see, what do you guys say? Oh, hey, Kenneth, good to see you. Christmas Lantern. Now that's a title for you. Jay says he needs a map. And he says, I didn't know 1/10 of that stuff. Now I really love Guy Gardner. Going to have to look up some of the issues. Well, good news, Ed. Some of those issues are going to be coming right up after the break. And I'll show you that they're actually not that expensive, so you can catch up on these things. So we will take our break and come back with some key Guy Gardner issues. Be right back.
Comic Collectibles is a pretty straightforward show. You got Rex here, he sells the comics, and you got Rockin' Robbie, he knows about the comics. And finally, John, well, no one really knows what John does. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great guy, but he just keeps showing up. Come to think of it, I don't even really know how he gets in here. Anyway, awesome comics, rare books, rarer signatures, slabbed books, and amazing cover sketches by Ken Hazer and others. Simple formula, you want the comics, you buy the comics. To sum up, Rex sells the comics, Robbie knows the comics, and John, who might possibly be a ghost. I mean, seriously, has anyone ever seen him show up or leave? Comic Collectibles with Rex and John, Mondays from 6 to 8 Eastern on The Experience. Comic Culture and Sales.
You know how when you go to Comic-Con, after Comic-Con, you go to the hotel bar, and there's a whole bunch of people playing music and dancing, and you've got Pikachu and Lara Croft Tomb Raider doing the cha-cha slide just down from Deadpool and Batman and Wonder Woman? That's every Saturday night over on the Experience Twitch channel. Join Taji Beats for the EXP Dance Party, exclusively on Twitch, twitch.tv/the_EXP.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. It is time to do some Guy Gardner issues. Now, that's a great Guy Gardner picture. Good pull on that one, Jay. All right, we're going to kick it off with his first appearance. First appearance of Guy Gardner, Hal Jordan's backup Green Lantern. This was Green Lantern number 59 from 1968. This goes for $665 on the high end, $190 on the median, $65 on the low end. You got to love that Gil Kane cover. All right, then we get, that looks like a Neil Adams cover, if I'm correct. And this is Green Lantern number 87 from 1971. First appearance of John Stewart and what happened to Guy Gardner, why he didn't end up being the backup. This one goes for $1,200, $445 on the median, $140 on the low end. That's probably because it introduces John Stewart, who's gone on to be a pretty big character. Green Lantern number 116. This is where Guy Gardner stands in for Hal Jordan. This is the first time actually, I think, suiting up type of thing. This goes for $35 on the high end. Median is $9, low end $3. So you can see the prices are now dropping. After that, this is Green Lantern 194, the classic battle between Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner. This was a tie-in to Crisis on Infinite Earths. And this goes for just $5 on the high end, $3 on the median. You might be able to find it in a dollar bin. Then we have Guy Gardner becomes the Green Lantern, or as the Green Lantern, he gets the ring. High end is $12, median is $3, low is $1. And then in Crisis on Infinite Earths number 9, from around the same time, Guy officially becomes a Green Lantern. So he gets his own ring and everything. Again, it's hard to believe that a Crisis on Infinite Earths comic could go for as low as $5 on the high end, $2 and $1. I remember that cover and loving it with all the bad guys on there. Now, he got his own solo series, Guy Gardner Reborn number 1 from 1992. This was Gerard Jones and Joe Stanton. High end on this is only $3, median's $2, low end is $1, and this is him, using his newer powers. And then it would get retitled and then get a 0 issue. So this was already going on 2 years later. This became Guy Gardner Warrior number 0. Guy Gardner gets new powers, including a genetically engineered DNA of history's greatest soldiers and the ability to transform his body into weapons. So this was this power that he had that no one ever really used, that he could basically tap into the knowledge and abilities of the greatest warriors of all time. But I think they've realized, yeah, that's great, but what's he going to do with it? That's just another one that goes for $3, high end $2, median, low end $1. And I think it has a reflective cover. That's why it looks so weird, at least the title. So this could be a really good one to pick up. All right, after that, we have him becoming a Red Lantern. And this was in Green Lantern Corps number 43 from 2010. And it's another one, $3, $2 median, $1 low end. So if you're looking to pick up and stockpile Guy Gardner books, they're out there. These are the good ones, and they are cheap. So, okay, and then we have a more recent one from 2018, Guy Gardner number 46. And here Guy Gardner joins the Dark Stars. And he was recruited by Tomar II, who I believe is the son of Tomar Ree, or related to Tomar Ree. High end on this is $4, median is $2, low end is $1. So, yeah, Guy Gardner, the most mistreated Green Lantern. I mean, the only person involved in a Green Lantern life that is more mistreated than Guy Gardner is Kyle Rayner's girlfriend, the one who got fridged and basically made the term fridged, thanks to Gail Simone. He's a character that it's interesting that that's the Green Lantern they've chosen, because if you put in Stewart or Jordan, there's an expectation that comes with it. You know, these guys are the types that could lead their own stories. And I think that's with all of the characters they're choosing, is that none of them have real big solo things. You know, Guy Gardner is pretty I mean, there's enough people that know him. Metamorpho, Hawk Girl, and Mr. Terrific. And they've had a few miniseries and stuff on their own, or short-lived series, but none of them are as popular as Hal Jordan Green Lantern or John Stewart Green Lantern, or, you know, I mean, there's other characters that if you put them into a story, you kind of want them to be the hero or the star of the story. So it's kind of like they did with the Shazam movie with Atom Smasher and Cyclone. It's like, we really don't have a lot of people that care about these characters, so them being supporting characters is fine. And that's what we get with these characters, is that you want them to be treated well, you want them to be done right, but they don't have to be the star. They can take a back seat to other characters like Superman without it feeling like an insult. You know, if you try to shoehorn Hal Jordan into the new movie, it's gonna feel like you're shifting Hal Jordan. You know, he should get his own movie. You know, certain characters deserve their own movie. Others, they're fine with being backup characters, and I think that's what they've put together, is a team of heroes that you're using for a purpose. They don't have to be. You don't need their origin stories. You don't need to have their big heroic moments. They can just be there to help the movie go forward. So, all right. That is everything I had for today. You guys got any questions about Guy Gardner or anything else before we wrap up? It will be interesting to see Nathan Fillion with a bowl cut. He keeps his hair pretty short now on the Rookie, so it's probably just going to be, you know, it's probably just going to be a little pop-on bowl hair on top of the hair he already has. So that should be interesting to see. Maybe down the side a little bit to cover the red, but I'm really curious to see how he looks, and if they're going to go with the classic big vest type thing that he tends to wear. Did they ever do a guy only omnibus or anything? Not that I'm aware of. I don't know of any Guy Gardner specific comics. I can take a quick look. Guy Gardner. Yeah, most of the stuff has been done for Hal and John Stewart or stuff like that. I can't see any that is just Guy Gardner. Let's see, trade. There is a trade for Guy Gardner Reborn. That's the, yeah. And yeah, that looks like to be about it. They haven't really taken his stuff and kind of collected it together. Now, maybe they will. This would be a good time for DC to do that. But at the moment, there doesn't seem to be one, which is a good idea that they will, because if there's already one out there, they might not. But the fact it hasn't been done could justify them doing it. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there, take a quick break, and then we will come back with In Stores this week. So stick around or jump over to the other channel, and I'll see you in just a minute. Have a good one.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.